Welcome back to The Explainer. Whenever you're following a high-profile criminal case in India, you always hear that phrase, right? The charges have been framed. But what does that actually mean? Well, today we're going to break down that exact moment, that critical step that officially kicks a trial into gear.
So what do you think it is? I mean, it's not the initial police report, and it's definitely not the final verdict. Nope. This is something that happens right in the middle, and it basically sets the entire stage for everything that comes next.
It's called the charge, or a rope in Hindi. And this is it. This is the moment a court formally looks at an accused person and says, listen up, this is exactly what you're being tried for. The second that happens, boom, the trial has officially begun.
All right, so what actually goes into a valid charge? What are the ingredients? To figure that out, let's invent a guy. We'll call him Ravi, and we'll see exactly how a charge against him would be built, piece by piece, according to the rulebook.
Now, for any trial to even be considered fair and effective, the law is super clear. It lays down these three fundamental conditions. And you got to understand, this isn't just a checklist or some boring paperwork. This is all about building a rock-solid foundation for justice. It's not enough to just have a charge. It has to be created and delivered in a very, very specific way.
Okay, so let's say our guy Ravi is accused of theft. The charge sheet can't just be some vague statement like, hey, Ravi did something wrong. No way. It has to be incredibly specific. We're talking the what, the where, the when, the who, even the exact section of the law that was supposedly broken. Why? Because it gives the accused a crystal clear picture of what they're up against. You can't build a defense if you don't know what you're defending against, right? Okay, that seems pretty straightforward for a simple theft, right? Just list the facts. But is that always enough? What happens when the crime is a bit more complicated? What if the how is way more important than the what? And this is where the law gets really nuanced. See, for a crime like theft, the basic facts are usually enough to get the point across. But what if Ravi was accused of something like cheating? Well, in that case, the charge has to go a step further. It needs to detail the exact manner of the crime, like how exactly did he deceive the other person? It's absolutely crucial because, again, the accused needs to know precisely what actions they need to explain or defend. But look, humans make mistakes, right? The legal system is no exception. So what happens if there's a typo or an error on Robbie's charge sheet? Does the whole case just get thrown out? Well, not necessarily. The law actually has some pretty smart safety nets built in for exactly this kind of situation. So it all boils down to one word: fairness. Let's say there's a minor error, like a typo in the date, but it doesn't actually confuse Ravi or prevent him from making his case. The trial can go on. That's called a curable defect. But, and this is a big but, if the mistake is so significant that it completely undermines his ability to mount a proper defense, then the whole trial is considered void. The system is basically saying, hey, a fair trial is more important than perfect paperwork.
And speaking of fixing things, the system has a built-in correction tool. A court can actually alter or add to a charge at any point before the final judgment. But here's the catch. Whenever they do that, the new charge has to be read out and explained to the accused. And if that change could potentially mess up their defense strategy, the court might hit pause on the trial or even order a whole new one. It's all about making sure fairness isn't compromised no matter what.
Okay, so that's how single charges work. But let's be real. Life is messy. Things get complicated. What happens when our guy Ravi is accused of more than one crime? Can the court just lump them all together and have one big trial?
Well, the general rule is actually pretty simple and, really fair. One offense, one trial. The idea is to handle each accusation separately to avoid confusing everybody and unfairly prejudicing the accused. But like with almost every rule in law, there are some really important exceptions.
So, exception number 1 is all about efficiency, and it involves this number. If Ravi is accused of committing up to 5 offenses, and they're all of the same kind, and he committed all of them within a single 1-year period, then yes, they can all be bundled together and handled in one trial. It just makes sense, right? It helps prevent the courts from getting totally clogged up with a bunch of nearly identical cases against the same person.
All right, the second big exception is something called the same transaction. This is for when different crimes are all part of one single connected story. So imagine Ravi illegally enters a house. That's criminal trespass. Then he assaults the owner. That's causing hurt. And on his way out, he grabs a laptop. That's theft. See how they're all linked? They're part of one continuous event. So in a case like that, they can all be tried together. So, we've gone through how a charge is built, how it can be fixed, and how multiple charges can be combined. But why does any of this matter? I mean, these feel like tiny procedural details. Why should you, or anyone, really, care? What's the big picture?
It all boils down to one of the most fundamental pillars of law, the principle of natural justice. Think about it. How can you possibly defend yourself if you don't know exactly what you're being accused of? You can't. And that's the whole point. The entire elaborate system of framing a charge is designed to protect that one single vital right.
You can think of it like this. A precise charge isn't just some legal technicality. It is the guarantee of a fair fight. When a charge is framed correctly, the accused knows exactly what they need to focus on for their defense. It prevents something lawyers call a trial by ambush, where surprises are sprung on the defense. It basically draws a clear line in the sand, defining the battlefield for both the prosecution and the defense, right from the get-go.
And really, all these rules about framing a charge perfectly illustrate that constant balancing act at the heart of any justice system, the need for clear, strict rules on one side and the ultimate search for truth on the other. It's a framework that's designed not just to prosecute, but to protect. So the next time you hear that phrase in the news, the charges have been framed, you'll know it's not just a formality. It's the starting gun for a fair fight. Thanks for joining this explainer.